Hello YouTube, I'm APC. Today I'm making a very special video for you guys. This video is my 100th video on my SynforgeGames channel. So, in order to make this video a little special, I figured I'd do something a little different. So in this tutorial I'm going to be, or not, it's not going to be a tutorial. Okay, so in this video I'm going to be talking about sort of the history of this channel and all the games I've made in the past, and this will hopefully be interesting to you, but also a little educational to show you how I started out, and to give you an idea of how much work is involved, and so you're not discouraged if you're not good right away, because it took me a while to get the hang of this as well. So let's get started. Well, I moved to America in January 2008. Before that I lived in the Netherlands. I was born in America, but I lived in the Netherlands for quite some time. And when I came here to Georgia, I had no knowledge of coding whatsoever. The most coding I knew was probably cheat codes in games like Age of Empires or Sims. So I went to high school. This was second semester of my freshman year, and I met someone who later became a friend of mine, and he told me about a company that he was starting, which made games, and it was called Syntech. And he was wondering whether I wanted to join. So and he also told me that the program they used was GameMaker, and my first reaction was that GameMaker didn't seem like a very powerful program. Like something named GameMaker, it's not even. I didn't know what C++ was back then, but I figured it'll be something like that if you're making games. But I went ahead and downloaded it and tried it out, and I was very surprised how powerful it was. Previously, I could never imagine how you could, what the logic was behind programming games, and I found it very interesting. So yeah, I went ahead and learned GameMaker. I started out using the Catch the Clown tutorial, and from there I just went through all the rest of Mark Overmars' tutorials, and I eventually started searching out tutorials on YouTube to get better at it. So that summer, 2008, I started on my game Dodge the Balls, which was my very first game, and I was trying to make it like some level in Zelda. I think it's called Link to the Past. It's where you dodge a bunch of things that's flying at you. Lucky for me, it's a pretty simple idea, so it was a very good game to start with. And then a year later, I managed to finish it. That's the tip to you guys who are wanting to get into game developing. If your first game, make it a simple idea and finish it. If you choose a complex idea and you don't finish it, then you're just gonna get discouraged, and you're probably not gonna learn as much from it. So, Dodgeballs was my first game, and I'm very happy with how it turned out. A lot of people got addicted to it because I put a lot of work into how the level was designed and all that. And looking back, I noticed that I did a lot of things inefficiently. For instance, when the balls go off the edge and they fall and they get smaller, the way I did that was I set up like 10 alarms. So I said alarm 0, make the size this, and set the alarm 1 to this. Alarm 1, make the size this, set alarm to this. So I didn't even know how relative worked. I just continuously set the value. Later on, when I learned code, because I did most of it in drag and drop, when I learned code, I could have done that in one line in the sub-event. So small beginnings. So I got involved with Syntech. We had a forum, and I got to know a lot of people on there. They're all really cool people, and what was funny was most of them were at my high school, but I met them all online before I met them actually in real life. It was kind of funny finding out who they were slowly over the years, and they became really good friends of mine. But one of the problems was that even though there are a lot of people on the forum, they're all basically friends of the president of the company, and none of them necessarily knew anything about game development. Well, the person who invited me, he knew quite a bit about programming. He was able to make some pretty cool games, but he didn't really finish any of them, which was a problem, like I mentioned earlier. And there's another person who could also make games, but he eventually split off because we weren't really getting anything done with our company, and he wanted to get stuff done, so he split off and started on his own. Okay, so because of the lack of knowledge in our team, I decided to start making tutorials on YouTube to create a centralized location where people can learn programming, and it's a lot easier than, or at least I think it's a lot easier than reading through text by Mark Overmars. He's really good at making the tutorials, but just reading through text makes it a little more difficult in my mind. So that's how I started my channel, Syntech Team, because the channel Syntech was already taken, so I called it Syntech Team. And let's see. So that's how I started making tutorials. My first tutorial series was Catch the Clown, which I wanted to cover all the basics of Game Maker.
We'll work on that later. And we want to move in a different direction. So put down a different direction, and we'll put down speed of 2 relative, because it's going to add to every time I click on it then.
And I was basically expanding on what the Mark Overmars Catch the Clown tutorial. So as I made my tutorials, I began to enjoy it a lot more, and I became quite dedicated to making them. And also, it quickly became apparent that nobody on the team really wanted to learn. They didn't want to put in the effort to learn everything. And so it eventually fell apart, but I was still very passionate about keeping going. So therefore I kept making tutorials, trying to gain a following, start the company that way. So the first development team I tried to start was Tyro. I contacted other YouTube tutorialists because I figured they knew what they were doing, and I asked them to help me out. So I formed a team of like 3 or 4 people, and we started working on it. So about teams, it can be very hard to get a team started because they all be passionate about the project, they often know what they're doing, and especially in the beginning, they're not getting paid, so they have no motivation to do it. And it's very difficult to finish games on your own. And for a team, you have to get a group of people who are all willing to put in the effort to finish the game and to put in extra legwork when it's not fun. So for that reason, Tyro didn't turn out so well. It was just as much because of the factors I said earlier, and because of my failure to communicate things. Like, I didn't tell them a lot about the game, what the game was about or anything like that. I just told them, here, make a sprite, which is, it's kind of hard to make a sprite when you don't know what context it's being used in. And so that was something learned from me. But I was determined to finish it, so I ended up doing about 80% of it. But it was finished, and although it was buggy and it wasn't very nice, and I made the music, which means that music was terrible, very annoying. So it didn't turn out so well, but it was finished. Yeah. So that was Tyro. All right. So after my Snake game, the Syntech forum got hacked. This was before the company completely fallen apart. So we decided to start a new forum, and we also decided to change our names. We changed the name to Synforge, and I made a new channel called SynforgeGames, which was where I moved all my tutorials to, or I started making tutorials on there. I redid my Catch the Clown series on there.
So add event. Events are things that'll happen. The event happens, we want something else to happen. So this is what triggers icons that you're programming, so to speak. So creation event, so the event when this is first made.
And that's the reason why it's called SynforgeGames, and that's the reason why we stopped calling it Syntech. So at this point we're in 2010, and I tried making a game on my own again, just a quick game, which I knew that shouldn't be too hard, was Snake. I made a tutorial on YouTube how to make Snake, and I just decided to expand that tutorial and make a better version of Snake.
So if we have it set that the future direction will be 0, or moving to the right, then want the dire actual to equal 0.
Yeah, I learned how to make multiple high score tables, and you might be wondering, there's a big gap between Dodge Balls and Snake, and I learned a lot in between there, despite not having made a lot of games. The reason for that is that I do make a lot of stuff on my own. Like I'll be curious about something and I'll try to figure out how to do it. That's how you learn how to do good problem solving skills. So there was like a 2-year gap where I just kept making tutorials and I kept practicing new things, and that's how I learned, even though I wasn't making any games. So Snake turned out well. It took me about a week to make, and yeah, that was pretty cool. And at the same time, in 2010, I tried starting my second development team. This was shortly after Tyro stopped. I tried to start another one. Again, I invited other YouTubers, and I tried to learn from my mistakes and keep them better informed of what the game was about, and I made videos covering what it was about and all that. But this time the problem was that they all knew what they were doing, and they all knew what I was going for. But this time I chose people on YouTube, and it's important to have live conversations so that you can get a lot of information processed between each other. But okay, so I had somebody in Canada, he was in the west side of Canada, which was 3 hours, 3 hours before me, and then I had someone in Australia, which was like 12 hours after me. So it was extremely hard to find times when we could all meet up on Skype and that kind of stuff. So that didn't get very far at all, because of my organization problems. So after that, I decided to layoff on development teams for a while, so I continued on, and the next game I made was Angle Shooter. Started summer 2010, ended in spring 2011, and this game I'm very proud of. This is my biggest game that I've ever made, and I learned a lot of new things making it. I used pretty much all programming for it, and yeah, I'm very proud of it. So that one went from summer 2010 to spring 2011. So in fall 2010, somebody saw my tutorials on the SynforgeGames channel, and he asked me whether I want to help program for their game. And they're making a Castlevania game, by the way. And I learned a lot about how they were a team. I learned a little more about how they worked together. They were all very passionate, and they all communicated a lot, which was nice. But they didn't really have a programmer because their previous programmers were built out on them. So that's why they asked me to help them out. So I looked at their code, and there was a lot of stuff that I wasn't familiar with. It took a lot of effort to read through all of the code that I didn't understand, which was very difficult for me. And I imagine that it's a lot more like actual programming, because you're not coding everything yourself. So I had to understand what the other person was doing, which was more of a learning experience for me as well. So I've been working on stuff for them on and off. I've really barely done anything. I programmed, if you ever play the game, I programmed the Skull Knight, and I programmed Dracula for the final boss. So that's everything that I've done. Almost all of it was already done when they came to me. So I'm still working for them on and off. And then summer 2011, so this is after Angle Shooter was finished, I made a game called Notes, which I wanted to sort of emulate FL Studio, where you can make beats by selecting and unselecting boxes. So from that game Notes, I learned a lot. The main thing I learned was that it's important that you program very modularly, not hard code things. So I made one object that was the note block object. Well, there are other objects, but I use that object a lot, and I remade that note block object for every single note block. So I had to have them operate regardless of their color, the sound they make, whether they with their position, whether they're visible or not, and that was very tricky to do. And so therefore I couldn't hard code it. I couldn't input the values directly. I had to create variables, like I had to create a sound variable because I didn't know what its sound was. I couldn't say the same sound every single time, and just stuff like that. So, and that's a very important coding skill to have. And I learned how to use scripts to generate them all and to create all the settings for them. So that also took like a week or two, and I'm pretty happy how that turned out. Then so later on, spring 2012, I tried my third attempt at a development team. This time I decided to make the team small because it's easier to keep track of everyone when it's really small. And I also made sure to communicate a lot to make sure that we were both all on the same page. So it's me programming, and it's Odin doing the sprites. So that's what this channel is currently devoted to. I wanted SynforgeGames to end up being devoted to game development stuff, but I also like making tutorials, which is why I made the Synforge Tutorials channel. So that SynforgeGames is now devoted to that, and our game is going to be called Unheralded. And this is very exciting because I think that this might actually be the first time that our development team is actually going to work, which means that we're going to be able to make a lot of progress from here. So that's where we are now. I'm working on Heralded and still learning new things, and the future is bright. So thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you guys next time.